Zune, I believe you've got parts of the Zune product moved on to Windows Phone 7. No doubt you'll have Bing as a search engine. I was just starting to write a post about Windows Phone 7 appearing to me to be the place where Microsoft technology goes to die, because it seems
the way you put it, you kind of go along with the PR from Microsoft by saying that Silverlight is being channeled towards the phone. What actually happened is the phone, when it was designed, it assumed that they still had to push WPF. Which is some of the foundation of the whole Silverlight. Silverlight is supposed to be a web plus desktop platform, but Ballmer was actually complaining people weren't adopting this for desktop. Nobody actually wrote any desktop applications with it. But anyway, what actually happened is when they built the phone, they assumed that Microsoft would still have this technology. Now, the funny thing is they have to cancel Silverlight because it's mostly a web thing, or at least practically eventually only some websites maybe used it, and then people would ask, what about the phone? And even several months ago, when I was cited for saying Silverlight is basically dead, and I said it back in August, people say, no, it cannot die because the phones use that. It can never die. It has to leave. And yeah, sure, it leaves, but it's because they have no choice. Otherwise, they have to chuck all those phones or to give it new firmware update or something, and try to change people's phones to basically have an entirely different stack, which they don't really have that yet. So it's not as though they move it to the phone. It's just that the phone is just stuck with it, with a dying piece of software inside it, and lots of the applications are built on top of that. So it's I think we're going to see some interesting things happening around the phone because it's built basically on something Microsoft killed.
Mm. But it's certainly going to be interesting. I mean, we've had this discussion before about about Android and my choice of the HTC. But I think as it dawns on Microsoft that people aren't going to be purchasing their phone, in my opinion. I think it's going to start. We're going to see far more aggressive actions. Microsoft realizes that it'll have to attack their competitors and the people that are running the phones that have got Android as a platform. I mean, I did a very unscientific survey at work the other day. We've got an office, and the office makeup is quite a diverse range of people, but none of them I would class as being interested in technology at all, other than it's a means to an end to make phone calls or play games or send emails. And I asked them, the dynamic of the setup of our office is about, I would say, half and half Apple iPhone and Android phones. And I asked them if they would buy a Windows Mobile, and it was pretty unanimous. Well, in fact, it was unanimous. When they were given a choice to actually buy a Microsoft system, one that didn't come pre-installed on a piece of hardware that they bought from Comet or PC World or any other seller, when they've got the conscious decision, they say no straight away. And I've noticed this as what Apple especially have been very successful in doing, is appealing to this market who do want to move away from Microsoft products and want a known brand which their friends know about and their friends talk about. And I think that's why, certainly in my office, we've had 4 new Mac buyers in the last 2 months. And people are moving away, and now they realise they've got choice. Whilst ideally I would like people to consider Linux and have a try with the Linux system, I think the exercising their right to choose and they're exercising their knowledge of knowing about choice is increasing, and that is probably it is a very good thing.
You have to remember the population you're surrounded by is not the global representation. So in some countries, if you don't want Windows, you have no Apple shop to go to. And I'm not talking about even money, even the availability of the hardware or the phones. That might be improving over time, but I think even if they did try to sell these, premium computers or very expensive type of Unix or BSD with some skins and stuff on top of that, and kind of the Apple experience and the nice logo and everything like that. Lots of people don't find it extremely attractive, like in the UK, also because the advertising you're exposed to and they're exposed to here is different from what in South America they see. So in South America, you cannot assume that they see these Mac versus PC type ads, and that they see people going around with shiny, Apple laptops being projected. I don't think they have many of these, and that's fine. In the UK and in the US, you can have a market penetration for Apple of over 10% quite easily. And I think you see this in all kinds of web surveys, which are considered to be biased and inaccurate. So if you look at Apple in the US and you look at surveys based on web statistics and stuff, you'd see Apple maybe even, I don't know, over 10%, but it doesn't mean they actually have 10% of the market. If you look at the actual shipping, and in Apple it's very easy to check shipping rates because you don't install Mac OS X unless you install a Hackintosh or something like that. I think if you put together the numbers, you get something like, I'm not sure if it was 6% or maybe 3%, 5%. I'd have to check the actual numbers, but that's the number of Mac PCs, as I call them, because they are just Mac branded PCs, and some of them might even run Linux on them, and some of them might be out of commission. But the number of PCs globally which are shipped with Mac OS X, which is basically all the machines that can legally run them, is just something like 5%. So here you have proof that Apple does not have 10% of the market. It's just the bias of the West and the English-speaking press trying to tell you, these are the numbers, because we, the English-speaking analysts, tell you that this is the numbers we have, and we have lots of IP addresses, and it doesn't matter all the IP addresses, most of the IP addresses are actually from the same country, but they expect you to think, well, that's a lot of data, so it must be very much true. That's some of those things that I oppose. I think, I continue to think that Linux probably has higher market share. Depends what you measure, depends how you measure it, but it has a very high market share, and a lot more than you'd expect if you check globally.
No, I agree. I mean, I know we've discussed this before, and I've got very mixed views on Apple that we could probably discuss all day, but just in summary, what I would say is that I do encourage, obviously I do like Apple in the marketplace. I think it presents users with another choice. I think it presents a lot of users with a friendly alternative to Microsoft, and here I'm talking about the mainstream user who doesn't have the time to spend researching, looking at alternatives, maybe trying out alternatives. And certainly from the people that I've seen that do buy the products, it offers them something, a kit which they can get involved in straight away. And diversity and choice is what it's all about. That's my view. And I think Apple, whilst there's good and bad against them, I think Apple needs to be commended somewhat for giving the end user. I know that
if I dare say so, and if I dare give a political analogy, and I'll try to keep politics out of the show, but the Apple is to the Republicans what the Democrats might be. So they're one of those companies that can give you the sort of the illusion of choice, or the choice you don't necessarily need, or you think you need this choice, but it doesn't give you the real choice. If you have the two major parties, you might say that although Apple is not a major party, it doesn't have, well, it has much in market value, but in terms of the desktop usage and install rates, they aren't as big as Microsoft, and they probably won't be for quite a few years now. But they give you the illusion you have like a two-party state. They give regulators the impression that there is lots of competition restored, but all you have is the same companies working for the same companies and working with the same restrictions, increasingly so. Some people on the side of Apple don't complain enough about, I think, about some of the issues that Windows users complain about, and vice versa. But lots of people miss the independence or the smaller groups which are in favor of the people, but they don't have as much capital and they don't have as much support by the people who kind of want to run the computer, the computer world, and want to set rules. And it's kind of I'm kind of concerned because people will end up, instead of seeing this one scary kind of company that wants to take control of things. They'll say, well, we have a leverager, we have a second company, we can choose, we can vote differently. But when they vote differently, they just vote for a different kind of master. They just choose masters, but they don't actually get rid of these masters and try to restore a democracy or